In this video, we're going to focus on how we can create a progress bar chart, but now making sure that there are rounded borders here on the item here, and of course pushing this a bit more down so that will be nicely and will fit when you start to make the chart smaller. So let's start to look how we can create this progress bar with rounded borders. So let's start to look how to create the rounded borders progress bar chart in Chartjs. So the first thing what we need to do is we need to get a boiler template, so which is on chartjs3.com getting started. This specific link here, which you can find as well in the description box. Once you're on the site, scroll down here and copy this boiler template. So you're going to copy all of this. And if you want to understand what this all does, make sure you watch this video that explains it all. So then, I'm going to paste that in here. And once I did that, I will cut out this, put that in the title, save, refresh. Alright, so now we have this. What I want to do is I want to maximize the size of the chart, 80%. There we are. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to swap the Y and X axis so that we have a horizontal bar chart. So I'm going to scroll down here into the options, press enter here, and then I'm going to say here, index axis, and this will be equal to Y. Save, refresh, there we are. Now we have this. What I want to do next is to make these bars very narrow. So I'm going to go here up, comma, and what I'm going to say here is, let's say, bar percentage. I'm going to put it on 0.1 or for 10%. If I save that, there we are, we get this nice narrow bar. Next, what I want to do, you can see here, the borders are basically skipped. So I'm going to say here, border skipped. I'm going to put this on false. If I save that, refresh, you can see here now we get these lines as well. Next, I want to have rounded borders here and there. So what I'm going to say here, border radius, so it's a comma, border radius, 10 pixels, this should be more than enough. Refresh, and now we have this nice rounded borders here. Finally, what I want to do, and this is just a default because we'll be needing this later on, and this is the category percentage, which by default is set on 0.8 or 0.9. So if I save that, refresh here, you can see nothing really changes because 0.8 is by default the category percentage, which calculates the size of this. Anyway, if you want to understand what this and this really does, study my other video about how to use the bar percentage and category percentage in Chartjs. I'll show a link at the very end of this video. So now we have this here. So what I'm going to do is I will leave the grid lines for now. Later on I'm going to push this down here, and then we're going to put the labels on here, or at least the value label, or at least the basically the text label here and the value label on the right side. So for that we must create a separate plugin. So we go in the options, or at least this option curly braces, put a comma here, and then what I'm going to say is plugins, bracket, and I'm going to say here this could be our rounded progress bar, and let's make this a B, capitalized, copy this. Then I'm going to say here, enter, slash, and I'm going to say here, rounded progress bar plugin block, and then in here, constant, this equals ID, and this ID will be equal to that, of course, and then we're going to define when are we going to draw the items on here. Well, in this case, I want to draw the background, the text on the left and the right side should be done before we draw the data set. And the reason why is we want this data set, or this bar, the progress bar, be always on top of its shadow. So there would be like a shadow going all the way to the end here. So that will mean before the data sets, we're going to draw these rounded progress bar shadow, and of course the text as well. So we're going to say here before data sets draw, and then I'm going to say your chart, arcs, and plugin options, and then in here I'm going to do an object destructuring. If you want to understand object destructuring, I'm going to recommend you one of the videos in the description, understanding Chartjs object destructuring. Very important to know. So it's a constant. I'm going to put in here curly braces and it's a chart. And then in here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to get here the CTX because I want to draw something on the chart. I will get the data object. I want to get the chart area object, and of course in here I will split this out in top, comma, bottom, left, right, width, and height. And then finally put a comma here. I want to get from the scales, I want to get the scale X and the Y variable, or basically in the scales x and y. So now we have this. What I want to do here now is enter, and then we can say ctx.save to save all commands above, and then we can start drawing. So to draw this, if I save this, refresh, nothing truly happens here because we are only preparing our drawing. We didn't do anything yet. So now what we want to do is, we want to calculate. Basically what I want to do is I want to calculate at least the height of this bar. So to do that, I'm going to use a nice formula for that. So we can get that one. And what we're going to say here is, we're going to say a constant. We're going to say bar height. And the bar height will be equal to what exactly? Well, let me show you. To do this, I need to calculate the height here, or at least grab this height, which is basically the height of the chart area. And then I'm going to divide this by the total amount of ticks we have. Well, in this case, we have 7 data points here, or 7 ticks. So I'm going to say here, let's do a console log first. You can see here, if I say height, you will see here we get the height itself immediately. Refresh, open up developer tab. You can see here, it gets the size, and as we adjust this, it probably will readjust as well. But you can see right now, it's 373.6. Alright. So then what I want to do is I want to divide this by 7. But the 7, of course, we can do this soft coded. So what we're going to do is we go here from data to labels, and we get the length of this. How do we do that? We have here this data. So we're going to say data dot labels dot length, save, refresh. Now we get 53.3 plus. Alright, so this is basically the first part that will calculate the length, or sorry, not the length, the height of the bar. Well, right now only this specific segment from here to there, and that is too big, of course, because we have this narrow bar here. So how do we calculate that? Well, remember this item here, the category percentage and the bar percentage, those two are part that we need as well. So what I'm going to do here, this height, which would be 50 plus, or 53.3, and then I'm going to say here, multiply by what exactly? Well, the data sets index 0. So if you're wondering, how do I get this? Well, to get here, how do we go? From data to data sets index 0, and then from here we go down to the category percentage and the bar percentage. So basically I'm going to say here, dot that, and then I'm also going to multiply that again by basically the same again, here, dot category percentage. Save that, refresh. Now we get it, and that is approximately 4.2627 pixels. Alright, so that's beautiful, because that would basically help us to get the height to draw from the left side to the right side our item. So now we have that, and basically here, this constant bar height, we can just cut this out. I'm going to put it in here, replace the console log with that, and delete this here, make a semicolon. There we are. So now we have this. And what we want to do now is, because we have the shape here, what I want to do is just, I'm going to say here, / shape. This will be the shape or the background shadow. And then what I want to do is, I'm going to put in the next item is the ctx.begin path. What I really want to do is, I want to indicate that we're going to create something here, and this shape is independent of anything else. So it should not be connected to anything else. Alright, that's number 1. Enter. And now what I'm going to say here, we're going to give this color. We want to give it a background color. So ctx.begin path. Oh, sorry, not begin path. We already have that one, but I'm going to say here the stroke style to give the lines a background color. So to do this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a tiny trick here. So we have this border background color here and the border color here. And if you look at this, what I want to do here is to make sure that this here is a solid red color. This should be a solid blue color, and it should not be a lighter color here. However, I want to keep that in so we can reuse the color without creating a separate array within here. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to say here the border width will be equal to 0. If I save that, refresh. And of course it doesn't work because we have here this. Let's comment this out first, save, refresh. So now we have this transparent color effect. I'm going to swap these two now. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to just grab this, we'll cut this out, put it above, and then I'm going to grab these, cut that out, delete all the extra space here, put that in there, save, and then refresh. Now you can see here we don't have anymore a background or a border here, but our border color, or that we swapped the color, now the background color is becoming very solid. If I would say here a border width, let's make this 5 so you will see it, save, refresh, you might see here, oh maybe that's too much, let's make this 2. You might see here now a slightly color here as well. So that is all fine, but what I want to do is just put it on 0, so it's basically non-existent. But we can borrow this color effect as our shadow later on here, so we don't have to play around with the array. So basically what I want to do here then is get the color, but this color is a nice trick. We're going to say data dot data sets index 0 dot, and I'm going to say border color, and for now I'm going to just grab one index and say index 0. So we get the red color here. We just grab this first color here. Later on I'm going to loop through that. So once we have this, and then what I want to do is the next part is basically starting to give also a filler. So I'm going to say ctx.fill style to make the background color equal to the border color equals, and just grab the same color here. Nothing fancy, just putting in that in there. Alright, so once we have this, the next thing what I want to do is I want to say here ctx.line width to define the thickness of the line, and the thickness of the line will be, well, let's see, we have basically what we have calculated here above, the bar height. I'm going to put that in here. So once we have this, and probably I want to make this later on a bit more narrow, but we're going to keep it like this for now, so you can see if the bar height, the thickness would be slightly thicker than our item here, we have to narrow this down, but we can do that later on quite easily. So once we have this, then what I want to do is I want to say ctx.stroke rectangle. Basically we're going to make the rectangle itself, and then what we want to do is we want to make it starting here. Well, let's get, instead of upper one, because the upper one covers basically from left to right, so we can do this one here. Let's get the Tuesday. So we're going to say here, first of all, we're going to start at the left position. So we have the left position, and then we say comma, and then what I want to do here is we want to start, the next one is the value of the data point, and I realized that maybe we need to already work with our for loop, so let's start with the for loop immediately. So I'm going to enter, and what I'm going to do here is the following. I'm going to use a special built-in command here, which is called the chart, which basically grabs the chart object, and then we say dot get data set meta without the s here. So not data sets, but data set, as it indicates here. It's singular, not plural. Very important. And then I'm going to say here index 0, but the index 0 here is in parentheses, and then I'm going to say here dot, and then I'm going to say here dot, this should be probably the data, and let me just show you what I'm talking about. So if I do this in the console log, I'm going to save that, I'm going to refresh, open up developer tab, you can see here we get an array with all of the data and the positioning here, which is absolutely phenomenal, and basically we can start to use this. So what I want to do here is this, I want to do a dot for each, because I want to loop through all of this data here. So that's why you can do like that. Then what I'm going to do here, parentheses, and then another parentheses. So I'm going to say here, this will be the data point, comma index. We'll be needing the index and the data point, and the data point is a shorthand for this. So that's basic for each loop knowledge. So then I'm going to put in here a function arrow expression to create a callback functionality, and all I want to do is I want to cut out everything we have here, put it in there, beautiful, and then maybe I'm going to cut out this, put it in here as well, and then let's put that back. There we are. Now what we can do is we can do continue on here, and this becomes easier because we have the left here, and the next thing what I want to do is I want to position on the Y. So how do we do this? Remember, we have here the Y position, you have the X and Y here, so we can grab this, and then what I want to do here in the X and Y is index or data point dot Y. Let's see if that should be sufficient. And then we say here comma. What I want to do as well is we need to define here the width, and the width is already predefined because we have it from the chart area. That's this one here. And then we say comma here the height. So how many pixels will be the height? Probably you can use here the bar height. Let's see how thick this becomes. Alright, so once we have this, let's say save, and going to refresh, there we are. Alright, so now it becomes quite interesting because you can see here the bar height is twice the size. So what we're going to do here is we're going to start readjusting this item. So we have this here multiplied by that, and then the height. So probably what I want to make sure is this should be first. Alright, then what I need to do here is the bar height, and I guess the thickness of the bar height is probably slightly too much, and if I can reduce this, let's say dot 0.8, let's see if this works, or sorry, not dot but multiply, and maybe I realize we can even do something else here. Alright, so this is the line width though. Let me just quickly check this. Alright, so after checking I figured out basically the item. So we don't have to do this here, I can just remove these parentheses, it doesn't make any sense. So the issue here was just quite simply, we have here a width, and then we make also here the stroke rect, which would basically define the height of the item as well. And this is basically counteracting, or there's like a double height here. So I'm just going to put in here 1 pixel, and the bar thickness will basically color the entire item. If I save this, refresh, you can see here now it starts to work, but it still slightly jumps out of it. As you can see here, we have just slightly too much. So what we're going to do here, we have to solve that as well. So what we're going to do here, we can change that one by defining here the left side, and I'm going to do here plus, let's say maybe 2.5 pixels. Do that. Alright, so there it is. And then we have the other one. We can do here on the width, we can say maybe, let's say 2.5 as well. See if this would be sufficient. No, I guess this is about 5 pixels. Save, refresh. Alright, so that's exactly within the line here. Beautiful. So the reason why this is happening is because we have our line thickness that overlaps it. So now we have this here, but of course what I want to do is rounded borders. And this is the reason why I am using a line instead of using a rectangle shape or a filler, fill rectangle. Because if I do a rectangle fill or fill rectangle, it will become a rectangular shape and not border or rounded borders. Because now with a line we can make these rounded borders. How do we do that? All we're going to say here, ctx.line join, and you can say here equals round. This forces the lines to be slightly rounded, as you can see here, which is beautiful. So now we have this one, and you might say, well, hold on, it just jumps out a little bit more. Alright, let's solve that as well. What you can do here, we're going to say multiply by 0.8, save, refresh, and now it is nicely within the margins here. Alright, so now we have this here. What I want to do next is start to work on, oh well, let's make this loop here. We have these data and I have the index, so we should be able to get the index with the colors. And data set index is fine, that's also fine. If I save that, now we get the colors. So now we have this all working. The next part is basically to push this down. So how do we push that down? Well, we are still within this structure here of the for each loop, and I'll just put it here above. Then we're going to start here, and what we're going to do here then is, let's see, we need to work on the positioning. So what we're going to do here is basically in this data point, and let's start to do a console log for this data point. Data point, save, refresh, open developer tab. And what we want to do here is, if we go in here, you can see here, well, basically it's a for loop, but you can see here this defines the position for the x, or for the y, sorry. So the y is basically here, depending on the item. Probably if we're going further at the very top, it should give us for this specific Monday value the position, which is supposed to be about 58.6 pixels from the top there. So what we want to do is we want to push that down more at the bottom here. So how will we do this? Well, we have the calculation here. So what we can do here is, well, let's see. We're going to say here, first of all, we want to grab here this dot y, and that's the one we need to reassign. If I save that, refresh, you can see here we get all the y values. So now what we want to do here is calculate basically the bar height, and I realize that this bar height here could be maybe outside of the for loop because we don't have to recalculate multiple times. So put it up there, and then we can say here, let's do here, let's put it in here. I'm going to say here the data point dot y is going to be reassigned, or we're going to give a new value which will be equal to top and then plus, and what we want to do then is get the bar height what we have pre-calculated. So once we do this, the bar height, let's see, and then I guess we can just put away the parentheses for now. If I save this, refresh, you can see here now it starts to move a bit, but not on the desirable position. So, but we have now control of the position here. So what I need to do here more now is we need to basically do this based on the index, because every time we have the height, we want to push that height one down, or basically one of these sections here down. So or segments, these are basically the segments, or every segment on a for loop. So what I'm going to do here is this will be the bar height, and I guess we can say multiply. We'll multiply this by index. If I save that now, refresh, alright, we get that one. Bar height multiplied by index. Let's see if that is really what we want. I feel like this is not really necessary, or we're slightly off. Let me double check. Alright, so basically after checking, I realized we could just do it easier compared to what we've done so far. This bar height here is correct, but we don't have to do a complicated item like this. I thought this was necessary, but I realized this is not truly necessary. And the reason why is because we had this one here where you calculate the truly how many pixels that was here. But this is not necessary, or the reason why it's not necessary, because if we have this item here, the data point, it will give us the information. So what we could do instead of this bar height here, let's remove all of this. Alright, so pay attention here. Sorry about this, by the way. So anyway, get this console of data point here. Save this. If I refresh, we should see here, if I click on this, we're going to see here somewhere height. And the height is 4.2 pixels. So I guess we just grab this one instead of doing what we did previously. So what I'm going to say here, the data point dot height in here, save that, refresh. Alright, that looks already much better. It's exactly the height of our bar. Anyway, what we still need to do here, and that's the only thing you can see here, is we're still not in the right position. We have this height here, we have the index here, but the index starts with 0. So that would mean we should move it at least a little bit more. So we should have, instead of 0, we need to start with 1 or at least 0.8. So what we could do here, this should be, I guess the bar height should be plus 0.8. So the index, if it's 0, it will start with 0.8. So if I save that, refresh, you can see here now we're moving it down. You can move it down even more to 0.9, depending on how much space you give it. So you just have to check on it. And I think 0.8 is quite decent. And the reason why is that if we make this smaller, you can see here later on as we're going to move it, then later on these items could be fit in here. Of course, the moment you go so narrow, it will become too hard to view. So I do assume here a certain amount of space. So that's of course a requirement of this. So I will put it back on 0.8. So we have that one here. What I want to do now is I want to get the Monday in here, and I want the value in there, and then after I'm going to remove the legend. We're going to move all of these items here. So we have the shape ready. So then what I'm going to do here is we're going to say here will be the text label, and then in the text label I'm going to say here ctx.font, which would be equal to 12 pixels, and we will be using the sans serif font family. And the font family basically is the default one that Chartjs uses. So then we have this. Then I want the color. I'm going to use this dark grayish color what they use, which is, if I'm not mistaken, CTX dot. Well, first the fill style for the color equals RGBA 102, 102, 102, which is the gray color, and then 0 or number 1. Alpha value of full transparency, of full visibility of 1, or opacity of 0, so no transparency at all. So then what I want to do is I want to say ctx.fill text, and this fill text here will do the following. We're going to grab here the item, this one here. Luckily we have a for loop, and the for loop, and we can get then immediately the label. So we say from data dot labels and the for loop index. So I'm going to say here for the text, this should be here basically the text, and then we have here the x and then the y position. For this, we can do here for loop immediately. So I'm going to say data dot labels, and then here index will be equal to index that we have here. So then we have the x and y value. So how do we get this? Well, basically we want to have here the x value. So what is the x value in this case? The x value will be the left side of the chart area, so say left, and then we have the y value, and the y value will depend on our position here, and we can put it here in the center, I guess, or we can put it a little bit higher compared to wherever our bar is positioned. So we can check here where is basically our bar positioned on the x, and we can check that. Let's see, we have the x value here, left plus 2.5, probably here somewhere. So basically what we need to grab, I need to get here the y, and the y is this one, of course. That's the one we are using. So if I put this in here, say refresh, you get the text, but look what happens. It is exactly behind the item here. Well, it's supposed to be behind, but I need to push this a bit more up. So what we're going to do now is basically the following. We're going to say here this, and maybe we can say minus 15 pixels. So minus 15. There we are. Then we get this quite decent item here. Alright, so that is the first one. And then the next one, and maybe we can even check here later on. I guess we need to fix even the baseline here just to be sure. So I'm going to say ctx.text baseline equals middle. So we put it in the middle just to be sure, because I think the baseline is not really perfectly in the middle. Alright, so now it is, so I guess this should be fine, and later on we can just fine tune that to make sure that this and the other right side text will be aligned. So what I'm going to do here, enter, enter, I'm going to say here slash slash, and I say here text value, and that will basically be the value. So what we can do is we can just copy this, just copy the upper text here, put that in there. I'm going to make this one 15 pixels, but I want this bold as well. So if I do this, if I save this right now, you can see here we get the Monday, but then in the value. Alright, so now I need to push that to the right side. So I'm going to say here, this is all fine, but this one here should be right, save, refresh. But then you can see here it moves outside of the area, which is correct. And the reason why is we need to do a text alignment. So we enter here, I say here ctx.text align equals right side, meaning I want to, if it's on the right side, this right side wherever the text starts, or at least must go back here calculated. So if I do this, you can see here this works, but of course this must be then set here on text alignment left, so it will start from the left side going to the right. So we say here, let's copy this, enter, and we say here left, save, refresh. Alright, that works, but of course this should be numbers and not the value itself, or sorry, not the label. So what I want to do here is, instead of labels, all we're going to do here is basically going to say data sets index 0, because there's only one data set. Then we're going to see data.index. If I do that, there we are. Let's get this color here to force a nice color instead of this grayish color. What I'm going to do here is simply grab here the border color, or not even the border color, the background color. Fill style, or you can just grab this, that's alright. I'm just going to say here background color, Copy that, put that in there, and I'm going to say here, background color. And the reason why background color, remember, we forced that into a solid color. So now we have these solid colors showing here nicely. And that's basically here what we did, and that looks quite phenomenal. Of course, final item, remove that, remove all of these items here. So you're going to scroll down in the scales, put a comma here, I'm going to say grid display, and then we say here false. And then next we're going to say comma here, and we're going to say here ticks display false. If I save that, refresh, you can see here now the Y scale ticks are gone and all the lines are gone, but what I want to do is one more item is still here, the line here, which is the border line of the scale. So that's in the grid, comma, I'm going to say here draw border false, save, refresh. Alright, that one works, but it's not showing fully because we have still one more border to do it on the X scale. So on the X scale we have still some grid lines that are blocking the view. So I'm going to just copy all of this, put it in here, save this, refresh. There we are, and then border, draw border. Oh, my bad, you can see here this is capitalized R. Save that. There we are. That works. Final item, what I want to do is the legend itself. So we can do here, enter. I'm going to get plugins. This of a legend. I want to pinpoint the legend. Let's see, display. And this display will be equals false. Comma, save, refresh, and there we are. And now we have this nice progress bar chart that should work even if we make it smaller. And you can see here, as we go more smaller and smaller, it will show, but of course eventually it will clip off once it's too small. So you have to consider that, or if you really want to solve that, then you have to reduce the font size for that. So that's the most important one, but basically this here looks absolutely phenomenal. And that's basically how you can play around with this. So if you enjoyed this video and maybe you want to do something more, for example, you want to click this, make this clickable, where you can just open up another screen or pop-up or model. In that case, I'm going to recommend you this video here, how to create clickable bars in a bar chart with links in this case. So when you click on one of these bars, you will be redirected to a different website, different page, which can be very interesting as well.